Basically, we are starting with web services. What are web services? What a web service actually is? You put a server-side code in web service and use it to connect to your client-side application, like the one you are developing in HTML JavaScript. You are going to connect your database through the web service with your HTML app. This is the purpose of web service that we use. So we are going to cover the following topics today. What is a web service actually, and what is WSDL? WSDL is nothing, basically the web service description language that we use, and there are two different types of web services and web service standards that are SOAP and REST web services. And then we'll take an example to understand how to develop the web service, and then we'll have a look at the methods that we can use it. Okay. So first of all, what is a web service? The web services are the web application components that we use to connect two applications. Okay, so web services are open standard based web applications that interact with other web applications for the purpose of exchanging data. What we want to do is we want to exchange the SQL Server data with our application using the web service layer in between. Okay, so we have WSDL, known as Web Service Description Language, that is used to describe the web services. With web services, we can use basically two input-output parameters, like we can have an XML-based web service or we can have a JSON database web service. We are dealing with JSON data, right? But we can have the XML way of doing the web service. So WSDL defines what type of input-output parameters you want, what rules the web service is going to follow. It's basically the set of rules that a web service uses. So you specify XML, JSON, and everything in the web service description language. Next topic. What we have is SOAP and REST. The WSDL we are talking about is the rules and protocols that we define for a web service using WSDL. That is used by basically the SOAP web services. What is SOAP? The SOAP is Simple Object Access Protocol. You access the objects basically based on some protocols defined in WSDL. You define some rules like what type of input parameters you want, what type of output parameters you want, and this type of description you are going to use. Some basic protocols that you define in the WSDL that are used by SOAP type of web services. But here what we are going to deal with is REST. We are not going to deal with SOAP, WSDL, anything. We work here with REST, that is representational state transfer. REST web services are basically architecture-based web services. You define the architecture, you use the HTTP protocols over the internet with the REST web services. So REST permits many different data formats, whereas SOAP only permits XML type. With REST, we can use JSON as well as XML, whatever we are comfortable with. But SOAP only allows the XML type. And REST has better performance and scalability. REST is good. Though SOAP also has some benefits over REST, like it has the WS security thing and some atomicity of the transactions. Both of them have their own pros and cons, but we are going to deal with the REST here, REST type of web services. REST is representational state transfer. Okay, so we are going to understand REST web service with an example here. What we want is we have an employee table and we want to get the list of employees from our database. Okay, so what will you do to get the list of employees? You write a query, right? What query will you write? Can you tell me? To get the list all of the employees from the data from an employees table. So let's start from employee, right? This is the query you're going to write, and you'll get the result here. Like if I write here, select start from, I want to select start from my employees table. I'll select the sample database and I'll say select start from employees. I'll get all the data here, right? Now what I want is I want this data in my HTML or JavaScript code. How will I get it? I have to embed this thing, this query execution part in a web service. Okay. So we are going to use the PHP web services. You can use either Java or any other language, whatever you're comfortable with. Okay. So we can create web services in any language. We are here going to use the PHP thing. Okay. So let us take an example here. First of all, what we do is we establish a connection to our database in a web service. The first thing is always connection to the database. For this, what I have done is for my Windows, I've opened my ODBC connection, data sources. Open this. It will open like this. Then I go to system DSN. I have these many DSNs already created. These are the data sources that I used to connect to the SQL server. That's the window driver.
So you already created something.
Yeah. So I'm going to add a new one here. Add this will give me this pop-up. I'll select the SQL server from this. We need to connect to our SQL server, right? So we'll select the SQL server and click finish. It will ask you the name of your DSN. Suppose we give it a name, sample DSN. And the server, it's going to ask, you can put localhost here. Localhost or your IP address, you can use anything. Click on next. It is asking for connection to the SQL server thing. We give the credentials that we use to connect to our SQL server. You can use Windows authentication also. Whatever you use to connect your SQL server in your open app. So I'll click on next. It will ask me to select the database. I want to connect. I have these many databases in my SQL server. I want to connect with the sample database. So I'll select the sample database here. Click on next. These are my things. Finish. So these are my connection strings. The DSN is established here. I will test my data source. It says test successfully completed. That means you have connected to your database. You have successfully created a DSN. So I gave the name to this DSN. Okay. So I can see my DSN here. Sample DSN connecting to the SQL server. Okay. So I'll finish this off. I use this same DSN, sample DSN here. ODBC connect is a function, PHP function that is used to connect to the ODBC driver. Okay. So this is the DSN name. This is my SQL server username and the SQL server password to connect to the SQL server. Okay. So now I have this connection object that is connected to my SQL server. Now what I want to do is, next step is, I have this query, select first name and last name from employees and order by first name. I want the result of this query in JSON format. So I'll take the query in a variable. Then what I'll do is, I'll use ODBC exec function of PHP that is going to execute the query for me. Like here, we click on this execute button, right, and it gives me the result. With PHP, what we do is we use this ODBC exec function and pass the SQL server connection object here in the parameter and the query that I want to execute. So it's going to use this SQL server for executing this query, and it will give me the output in this resulting variable. Okay. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an employees array here. Then I'm going to loop through the result that I've got. I'm going to loop around all these values that I've got here, and one by one I'm going to put these values in employees array. I'm going to fetch array that will give me one row every time, and I'll put this row here in the employees array. Now I have the complete employees array with me that I wanted. I put this in an array, and the result code I set 0. That means the success result code. I'm setting the success result code here and the data as employees array. Now I want this data to be sent back as JSON data. So what I do is I set the header content type as application JSON. Let me set the content type of the response to JSON, and I'm encoding the JSON. I'm using the JSON import function and passing this post array that I have the complete result in here, and it will give me the JSON array of my employees data. Let's see how it works in the browser. Web service. I have the web service in my web service folder in my root time, and I give employee employee.php. This is my web service. I execute it here. It gives me my employees data. Let's see if we can indent the JSON properly to see here. I have the success result code in my response, and the data I have is first name and last name of all the employees in an array. I can change this to whatever I want. I can select star, I can select add city or a few more columns. I can change the query however I want. But we have learned the SQL queries, right? We can put joins here, we can put any complex queries here, and we get the output in JSON format. So, we are using JSON format, but in case if you want the output to be there in XML format, you can use REST in both cases, XML and JSON. So here what I've done is have set the content type header, what I've set it here as JSON, and changing it here as XML. This is the content type of XML, and this is the root tag that has to be there with every XML document if you have, and then you create your own tags. I want my data to be enclosed in employees tag, and then for every employee I'll have the emp tag, and I'm looping around my post data that I have the employees array in, right? And I'm just putting in my employees data, whatever I have first name, last name here in employee tag for each employee. Let's see now how XML data looks in the output. This is the XML format. You're getting the values and tags. This is my whole employees array, and in the employees array I'm having emp and the values inside. This is just to tell you, but we are going to use the JSON format in all the cases here. Now what we are doing is, next is, I want to pass a parameter to this web service. So for example, I want all the employees that belongs to a particular city. I have this data. I want the list of employees where city name is say London. So what will I do with the web services? Here I have to, how to write the query, right? You will add the where clause, where city equals to London. But I don't want to hardcode the value of city here. I want the city name to be passed by the user. I want to take the input from the user. Then what will I do is, here I take the input parameter from the user using get method, get city. It will give me the value of city that user has entered, and I will pass it on to my query as a variable. And it will,
So whatever the city will, if you just put the names of the person with the same city.
yeah, right. So I'm passing it as a variable through user. So how it works is, say here we are here. I want to pass a parameter here in the get call, right? I'll put a question mark in the end of the URL. I'll get city equals to London. So I'll get only those employees who belong to city London. I can change the parameter here. Say we have values for Seattle. I'll get the value Seattle here, and I'll get the employees where city is Seattle. So I'm passing the city as a parameter, input parameter by the user. Okay. So this was the basic structure of a web service. Do you have any questions here?
And if we want to connect it to the HTML, just want to.
We'll come to that part later. Just first understand the basic structure of web service. Correct? Okay. So here what we are using is the get method of input, taking the input from the user. The next topic we have is the methods. There are 4 types of methods that we can use with a web service: get, post, put, and delete. Generally, get we use when we want to get something from the database, get the values or get the details of a particular object. Then we use the get method. To get method, generally in get method we pass the parameter here in the URL itself. But there are some information, like say if you want to create if you want to pass some password, user password information, sensitive information, or you want to create something, then you don't want your data to be displayed in the URL, right? You want to hide it from the URL. Then what will you do is you'll use the post thing. Post and put, these things won't display the data in your URL. They'll just append the data in the body of the call and you can fetch it from there.
In the employee, just now the example you used post.
I use the get thing here.
Okay. That means you took the post as an name to get the details of the name.
That's just the name. You can take any name. So this is the method you are using here. When you use post, you just have to use post here and you'll get the values in your city object. You'll replace the get with the post. Post method we use for when we want to create a new record. Put method is used when we want to update a record. When we write here the update query, we'll use the put method to get the input parameters. Similarly, if we are
Instead
using
of putting there, we can just directly put it in the database. Just updating the record.
I didn't get your question.
Like you're saying putting it in the URL.
That's just a method to get the input from the user. You're getting the input from the user using 4 different methods. If you're selecting something, if you're getting the data from the database, then you are getting the input parameters as get. If you are creating something, if you're putting back something to the database, then you're using the post parameter because you don't want your parameter values to be shown in the URL to everything. Right? Similar thing goes with the put. Put thing you're using when you want to update something to the database that already exists in the database. Right? You're updating something. Then you'll use the put thing. Puts will also not display.
The put and get everybody. It is done by the user, not by the admin.
You have to code it. That's the developer's thing, not the admin or the user's thing.
So instead of
User won't know what method you're using. For user, it's the same. User will just pass a parameter, whatever he wants to pass, and you will have to process it further.
So what I'm asking is, instead of putting in this file, we can just directly update in the SQL also, SQL also. Can we do that?
How will you connect your SQL query with your HTML thing?
Not in the HTML, here with the SQL. Directly putting the values in the SQL.
Still not getting your question.
Here you are saying you want to update something in the PHP file, right?
You want to update your data, like we wrote the update query, right?
Yeah.
If you want to write the update query here, if you want to update something to the database here,
just update employee.
Yeah, how will you get the parameters, input parameters from the user? You want to update, you want to update the city. Okay.
Okay.
What value you want to update? Say I want to update the city, where city was London. Now I want to update it to, say, South Plainfield.
Okay.
So I'll pass the input parameters I'll take the input parameter from here, right? Then to get the input parameter, I use the method put for updating something. Similarly, if I want to write the delete query, I want to delete something from the database, then I use the delete method of the web server.
That's what I'm asking. Like, instead of doing here, we can directly go to the SQL and delete the database, whatever which we want to delete.
Yeah, you can do that, but how will the user going to do that? You have to uh, build a user interface for the user, right? A developer can just directly go and delete from the database, but the
So
user
this
cannot.
is for the user.
Yeah. Are you clear with the methods and all for the web service?
Mm.
Okay. So there are some references for studying the REST web services and the XML format and everything. You can refer to them, and that things are good for the day. Do you have any questions? You can ask now.
Mm.
You good? Sure. Okay. Just